as you may have noticed, has been adjusted to increase the distance between microphones and reduce the chance of feedback from an ambient earpiece. These measures are in place so that we can conduct our business without interruption and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including our interpreters. Thank you all for your cooperation. Now, as a reminder to you, I started by saying welcome to meeting number 99, part 2, because we are actually still in the meeting that we started last week, because we suspended that meeting. So our business was suspended on Thursday, 9th of May, while there was a debate on a motion taking place. If you will recall, this was a motion of Mr. Godin that was amended by Mr. Beaulieu and then again amended by Mr. Généreux. So that is the motion that we are on. Furthermore, as you know, I convened this meeting that started last week because 5 committee members had requested that the Minister of Official Languages be invited to appear before the committee within the study on federal funding for minority language post-secondary institutions to respond to the actions of the member for Glengarry Prescott Russell and for any other question related to his responsibility as Minister of Official Languages. I'm telling you this because the committee can't consider 2 motions at a time. Meeting number 99 was suspended, and now we are meeting on a 164. So perhaps, Mr. Généreux, I can wrap up, and then I'll get back to you. What I'm trying to say is that the standing orders forbid us considering 2 motions at a time. Now, we can adjourn debate on one motion, so the motion that we left off on, in order to discuss the 1064, Standing Order 1064. Now, Mr. Généreux, I'm going to recognize you. Please be careful with your microphones. You cannot turn on your microphones all at once. Mr. Généreux, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to table a dilatory motion that reads as follows, that the committee consider the letter of the 10th of May under 106.4. To my knowledge, a dilatory motion means that we have to move to a vote right away. That's what I was asking before. But Mr. Beaulieu also had something to add. I saw him raise his hand. So I want to understand. The meeting was suspended, but can you tell me what the speaking order was at the time? Mr. Serré first, Mr. Drouin, Mr. Beaulieu third, Ms. Ashton, and then Monsieur Godin. Thank you. So, Mr. Généreux has tabled a motion, so that shortens things. Is there consent on Mr. Généreux's motion that we move straight away to 1064 and therefore we adjourn the debate? Well, a new motion can't be tabled. Well, this is a dilatory motion. No. We have to move to a vote immediately when there's a dilatory motion that is tabled so that we can adjourn the debate. Am I correct, Mr. Généreux? That's what you want to do so that we can move on to the Standing Order 1064 letter? Well, then, just to be certain that I understood, we're adjourning debate. That's what you're doing, right, Mr. Généreux? Well, the 1064 letter. So we're adjourning debate and we're moving to the letter under 1064. Mr. Beaulieu. So we're adjourning, going on to 1064, and then we're picking up where we left off? Is that it? So we'll be going back then to the meeting?
Oui. Effectivement, si un membre en fait la demande, on peut...
Yes. If a member requests that, we can do that until 12 o'clock. So the vote has been asked for. I think there's consent around the table. I'm looking to see if anyone is opposed. Everyone agrees? Yes? Right, then there is unanimous consent. We're adjourning debate, Mr. Généreux, and we're moving on to 1064.
Qui prend la parole?
Who would like to speak?
Monsieur le Président,
Chair, the letter, the 1064 letter, was written by Mr. Godin. Is he here today? He will be here in a few minutes.
Je peux répéter.
Listen, we're all adults. There were injuries caused in committees because sometimes people were turning on their mics at the same time. So please, I can see you. The clerk can see you. I can see the table. I can see you online. So, Mr. Beaulieu, you have the floor. Well, we feel that because Mr. Boissonneau couldn't appear last week, he was already involved in the debate. So it would be important to be able to ask him questions, because he had all rather awkward comparisons that were made based on anecdotal evidence. So I think it would be important that we be able to meet him and that he come back.
Madame Lalonde, puis ensuite Madame.
Ms. Lalonde and then Ms. Goodridge. Go ahead, Ms. Lalonde. Well, I'm trying to understand. Is there a motion before us? Was it tabled? I understood what Mr. Beaulieu was saying, but I have no idea what we're talking about. I understand that we're here under 1064. Some people are here in person, and they've made the effort to be here on time. Some who aren't here, some are appearing remotely, but I don't have anything. Mr. Beaulieu, with all due respect, do we have something written in front of us that we'll be talking about today? Well, I don't have anything as the chair. Ms. Goodrich, you have the floor, then Mr. Beaulieu. Sorry, Ms. Goodrich, one moment. We need to do your sound test first.
Merci. Alors, ça, c'est qu'est-ce que je voulais souligner. J'étais pas capable de...
That's what I wanted to say. I wasn't able to do a sound test before the meeting. There were problems, but I hope it's working. It's working. Is that what you wanted to say? Yes, I just wanted to point out that I did have some technical problems, some rather significant problems. Mr. Beaulieu, you have the floor. So, under 1064, we are requesting that the committee be convened in order to invite the Minister of Official Languages on the funding, federal funding of minority language post-secondary institutions in order and to respond to the actions of the member for Glengarry Prescott Russell and answer any other relevant questions. So we would like this to happen as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. We don't actually have a motion as things stand, but first I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Drouin. So I understand that a letter was sent requesting that the meeting be convened, but there is no motion. Do you have something in writing?
Monsieur Serré?
Mr. Serré? Well, as mentioned, there is actually no motion in writing. We would like to see what the topic is that is going to be discussed today. We have to be specific. You know, I traveled from my riding Monday evening to be here. So I'd like to make sure that we all know what we're talking about and that we're talking about something specific. We all have a lot of work to do in advancing French throughout Canada and in Quebec. There's a lot of work that we need to do. So I think it would be important that we do something constructive today. Thank you very much, Mr. Serré. Mr. Généreux, then Ms. Goodridge. I'm giving the floor to my colleague who just arrived here because he has motions to table. Well, before you then, Ms. Goodridge. Thank you, Chair. I know that people traveled to be here today. I even tried to go to the airport yesterday, but as people know, Fort McMurray, a part of Fort McMurray was evacuated yesterday, including the Francophone school, actually, École Boréale. So there were problems. There was a certain amount of confusion, and I believe my colleague, Mr. Godin, is here to move his motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Godin had the floor after you. Thank you, Chair. We recognize these are rather exceptional circumstances. People are busy, and I'd like to say to my colleague, Mr. Serré, all efforts were made to get here on time. But unfortunately, we can't necessarily solve Air Canada's transportation problems. But anyway, I'm here, and I'm very happy to be here because I think this is very important for the Quebec and Canadian francophonie. So, Chair, I would like to table a motion that we will send to the clerk in both official languages, and I will read it on Wednesday, the 15th of May, that the committee be convened without delay for 2 hours to invite the Minister of Official Languages to appear before the committee as part of the study on federal funding for minority language post-secondary institutions and any other issues related to his duties as Minister of Official Languages, and that this meeting take place within 2 weeks of this meeting. So, Chair, I think it's very important that the Minister be here in order to be able to help us complete our study on funding for post-secondary institutions. That was going to be the last part of this study. Now, we will not repeat the words that were used within this committee, and we won't talk about all the long procedures and the process that took place and the redemptive process and the apologies on the part of my colleague from Glengarry Prescott Russell. Sorry. Point of order. Thank you, Chair. We don't have anything in writing. Could we please have the motion in writing in French and English so that we can take a look at it?
Monsieur Godin, écoutez, un instant tout le monde.
1 minute, everyone. I would like this to be the very last time I have to say this in committee. Stop speaking at the same time. This is what injures the ears of our interpreters. I see all your hands. I see all the people on screen. The clerk is here to help me. Raise your hand, and I will give you the floor. And you do not turn on your microphones when you don't have the floor. Mr. Serré, continue, please. Well, I think it would be appropriate to suspend so that we can take a look at the motion ourselves. Thank you. I was going to tell you that the motion was being circulated, so we can all take a look at it, and we'll suspend briefly.
OK, nous reprenons.
All right, we are going to continue. I'm sorry for those online, Ms. Goodrich, Mr. Leroux, and Ms. Ashton. When I suspend, the screen in front of me goes black. And so is everything okay on your end? Did you have time to familiarize yourself with the motion, rather? Ms. Ashton, is everything all right? Perfect. So Mr. Godin, your hand is up, then Mr. Serré. Go ahead, Mr. Godin. I believe it's important to invite the minister yet again, as I said in the motion, because exceptional events have happened, or particular ones. Particular is maybe a little bit more negative, so I'd go with particular events have happened. We have lost an hour with the minister because the Liberal MPs filibustered. After that, we used procedures such as 1064, which is why we're here today. But it's important for us to get back to the main topic, which is the study on post-secondary institutions. As you know, having the minister here was actually to conclude and to wrap up on everything that we've heard, and so that we could publish a report on our study that would be constructive. So I believe it's important that the minister come back to the committee. Then we can proceed. Here's the reason we use that process, or the procedure, rather. The Liberals filibustered. We had a suspended meeting, and we continued. And so we know what the Liberals will do until I don't know when. And I don't know why they brought out the big guns to defend the indefensible. So I believe it's important. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, rather, can we keep quiet in the room? You mentioned earlier that all this noise will hurt the interpreters. I meant about the microphones being open one at the other. Oh, so we can talk one over the other? You seem to be in a mood. Here's what I said. It's the third meeting that I've said this at. We could not have multiple microphones open at the same time. Now you have the floor. I will come back to that comment. Do you tolerate comments with the microphones off from either side? I've been here for many years. Yes, there's a comment that was made on the other end, but it was quite low. So I don't think that it interrupted you or cut you off. You're asking me with regards to the microphones? You've been here a long time as well. It's been louder and more active than this. I understand that it's annoying, but the ideal is for everybody to listen when someone has the mic, and everybody, and I do mean everyone. So please continue. So it is important, as I mentioned, for us to bring back the minister. I won't waste any more time. I just want to work on these francophonie issues. Thank you. Mr. Serré, and then Ms. Lalonde. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Godin for submitting his motion in writing. We talked about it on Thursday, and we'll continue to talk about it today. Friday's letter from May 10th, which talks about exceptional circumstances. I have a different opinion than the opposition. The motion is clear. I have an amendment to suggest, but when we talk about exceptional circumstances, Mr. Godin mentioned earlier that, well, we have Mona Fortier and Marie-France Lalonde, who are, fierce defenders of the French language in the country, along with Mr. Drouin. And Daryl Sasson is also usually part of our team. These are people who really care about the language. I know that the opposition here today is also very passionate about the French language. So it's important for us to ensure that the language is defended across the country. I thought we would have a motion today about, the decline of French across Canada, in Quebec, and I thought that we would follow up on the study on minority language post-secondary institutions, maybe some funding, because there are some issues with regards to funding. I thought maybe we'd talk about Francophone immigration and how important it is for our post-secondary institutions across the country. I thought we would maybe talk about the continuum of education in elementary schools or in high schools. I thought we would talk about various laws. Of course, the Conservatives want to cut funding to CBC, so I thought we would talk about Radio-Canada because it's a very important institution for minority languages, or for a language that is in a minority position. Just a moment, Mr. Serré. Mr. Godin, I think that we should stick to 1064, its content, and I think all of our comments should be related to that. So I would like Mr. Serré to withdraw his comments and only make comments with regards to the 1064 letter. Thank you, Mr. Godin. Mr. Serré was talking about the post-secondary institutions, and he referred to CBC. Please, around the table. He's talking about CBC, and he commented that the opposition wants to close CBC. He has not finished his sentence, and all of that is within the context of the post-secondary institution study. We are not right on the subject yet, but I need him to finish his sentence so that I understand where he's going. But it seems to be related to the continuum of minority language funding. Thank you. These are issues that are very important to various institutions, such as Radio-Canada. When we are talking about when we refer to the motion itself, it is mentioned there, and it is important. I'm currently temporarily involved in the Canadian Heritage Committee, and we are looking at C-316, which the Conservatives are against. I thought we would talk about those things, but no, here we are on another motion. Last Thursday, there was a motion to invite on May 9th at 8:15. That's when we meet up, usually on Thursday mornings, quite early. The notice of motion was for the federal funding for minority language post-secondary institutions of the official language. We had the Honorable Randy Boissonneau present here at 8:15. He made his opening remarks for 5 minutes, as witnesses normally do. That is related to Monsieur Godin's motion tabled today. I'll try to put a positive spin on things. I have a different interpretation of Thursday's meeting, Mr. Godin. I hope that Canadians listening today can see this. When the witnesses appear, the opposition is always has the first round of questions, and the Liberals follow. The first intervention was from Mr. Godin, or by Mr. Godin, directly, a question directly for Mr. Boissonneau. Just a question. My colleague is forgetting the apologies of his colleague. That is not a point of order. Please turn off your microphone. Mr. Serré. This is a very relevant point. The first MP to speak on the Conservative side was Mr. Godin. His first question to the minister was not even about the study that we were talking about. We were talking about post-secondary institutions, and he was our last witness to talk about the post-secondary institutions. Mr. Godin did not even ask a single question that would be related to that study. And here's why it's relevant. The first question that Mr. Godin asked to the minister was what his position was. I have the letter here from May 10th. And there are exceptional circumstances. The minister has to be invited. It's an emergency. You know, it's quite expensive to have a minister show up here. There are various, 1064 is even cited in this letter. And I'm going to cite the letter. Just a moment. One point of order at a time. I don't understand the link between these comments and the motion. The goal of the motion is to invite the minister. Does he agree or not? So first, we're talking about the motion. This is on topic. I understand what you're saying, but he's not talking about something else. So I can't prevent him from speaking about the motion. I will, when people are off topic, bring them back to the topic, but we are on topic today. The motion is about inviting Minister Boissonneau. Is he for or against it? Mr. Beaulieu, do you have another point of order? Thank you. Mr. Serré. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Beaulieu, for your comment. But it is obviously related. I will quote from Mr. Godin's letter. Mr. Généreux, Mr. Cousy, Mr. Dalton, and Ms. Cousy signed. This letter is from the 10th. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll refer to the last paragraph. I know that every member of the committee has the letter. 1064 is referred to, and we talk about appearing before the committee for federal funding for minority language post-secondary institutions, and then we ask the minister to appear in order to respond to the actions of the member of parliament of Parliament for Glengarry Prescott Russell. And yet this was the first question that Mr. Godin asked the minister on Thursday. And then Mr. Boissonneau, who is a proud Franco-Albertan and Franco-queer, gave his answer. And of course, the meeting was suspended. He gave his answer to Mr. Godin on the subject at hand today. Then there was an opportunity for a second question. And so I thought that Mr. Godin would talk about the post-secondary institutions, but no. He moved to table a motion. We have the motion here. It is a very partisan motion against a proud Francophone. I wonder if the leaders of the Conservative Party and the Bloc have had a lot of influence on their members. The minister was here only 5 days ago. They decided to table a motion to talk about a variety of elements that I can reread if the opposition wants, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about convening the minister who was already here. I'll mince my words. I don't know if it's arrogant or hypocritical. I don't know what term I should use, but I do think it's difficult to understand why we're here today. We've traveled across the country to look at this motion to invite the minister when the minister was here on Thursday, and the opposition did not even ask a relevant question. They preferred to pass a motion to destroy the reputation of a proud Franco-Ontarian. This morning, we received a letter from the Association des Franco-Ontariens, and they have clearly said that it is time for us to move on and talk about important topics. French is declining across the country and in Quebec, but no, the opposition is here to play partisan games and attack a Franco-Ontarian. The minister answered on Thursday, but yet we've had some point of orders today. We're not against the motion, but perhaps we can make some amendments. Here is what Mr. Godin suggested this morning. Or rather, I would like to add something to what he suggested this morning. Mr. Beaulieu mentioned earlier or asked earlier if the Liberals are for this motion. We're always here. We're always happy to have the minister here, and he was here on Thursday. I think we have to move on and focus on more important issues. So here's my amendment, and I hope that it will be receivable for other members. At the end of the motion, it says, and that the appearance take place within 2 weeks of this motion being adopted. So if we adopt this motion today, and we look at our calendar 2 weeks from now, it's clear that Canadians listening to us should know that the month of May and June are very, very busy times of the year. It's the most busy time, actually. So perhaps we can modify the motion, and instead of saying within 2 weeks, we could say by the end of the parliamentary session. I think that that is a friendly amendment that would be receivable from the opposition. I don't know if all members would agree, but we can make a small adjustment here, remove within 2 weeks, and replace by the end of June, or rather by the end of the parliamentary session, because it ends before the Saint-Jean-Baptiste. And it's a very important day for Quebecers. We know that the minister is very busy, as other parliamentarians are. So I think that this is a very friendly amendment. I know that the Bloc, I can see that the Bloc and Conservative Coalition is discussing, but I think that this is a receivable amendment. Have you submitted it in writing? There were 2 amendments. The first is with regards to the parliamentary session. And then, of course, we always have the ministers here for an hour. So instead of 2 hours, we say 1 hour. So the first amendment is to say for them to appear for no less than 1 hour. And then at the very end, that the appearance take place before the end of the session. So just to repeat, that the motion is circulating, that the committee invite, as soon as possible, the Minister of Official Languages to appear for 1 hour as part of the study on federal funding of minority language post-secondary educational institutions, and any other matter related to his duties as Minister for Official Languages, and that the appearance take place by the end of the session in June, period. Questions on the amendment? Mr. Beaulieu, I believe, on this amendment. First, Mr. Godin.
Non, mais un instant, M. Godin. M. Godin.
Mr. Godin, wait, please. I want to speak to the amendment. I want to see it in writing. I'm simply making the same request that Mr. Serret made earlier, and we responded by tabling it with the clerk. We're waiting for it to be handed around, passed around. This is an amendment to your motion. Just a moment, please. Now, before suspending, because we need everyone to be able to read this, there's a motion that was tabled by Mr. Godin. Mr. Serret is now moving an amendment. So we're not actually on a sub-amendment yet. So we're going to suspend a couple of minutes so that everyone can look at it. I have it in writing, and it is being handed around by the clerk. So we'll suspend for a couple of minutes so that you can read it.
Non, donc j'avais Monsieur Beaulieu.
So I had Mr. Beaulieu on the speakers list on Mr. Serre's amendment. Well, on the amendment to the 1064's purpose is to avoid, basically, that the Liberals be able to continue their filibustering the way they're doing. And so that we can meet the minister and wrap up the study on the funding of post-secondary Francophone institutions. Now, what I see from where I sit is filibustering. I also see this continued defense of the member. I'm sorry, Chair, you're not even giving me a few seconds. You gave him time. Is this related to the amendment and the changes, 1 hour and end of the current session? Yes, that's what I'm speaking to. I think their defense is unacceptable. I mean, they're saying that we're attacking Francophones. They keep using Francophones as a tool, and they use this as a tool against the minorities in Canada. We have a right to defend French in Quebec. Now, we thought something would change under the new legislation, but that's not what's happening. So there's always this way of using people and issues and Francophone and Acadian communities as tools against Quebec. Let's just stop that. Let's put an end to this. I mean, it's contemptuous. And the remarks were contemptuous. I think they were unacceptable. And I think he's disqualified himself, actually. And this was the third time that Mr. Lacroix was coming to the committee. What he said wasn't anything new. If the members had listened when people were speaking about Quebec, perhaps they wouldn't have reacted the way they did, unless it was actually on purpose. But regardless, the defense that they've also made is just more of the same. That is to say, intimidation and trying to avoid having people speak about the defense of Francophones in Quebec. So I agree with the amendment because I want this filibustering to stop. And I want us to deal with the substantive issue. That is to say, the underfunding of post-secondary institutions, that is to say universities, colleges, outside Quebec and in Quebec. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu, Ms. Lalonde, and then Mr. Godin. Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to apologize to my colleague, Mr. Godin, because when he was speaking, perhaps I got a bit too excited, Chair, and maybe that doesn't necessarily reflect the way I usually am, but I have to say that I was really impressed at the way we were being described. So I was excited because he'd sort of called us the big guns. I don't consider myself that way. I'm a proud Francophone. But I would identify all members of my caucus as great defenders of the French cause and of Francophones. Now, I'm proud to see that my colleague, Mr. Beaulieu, appears to be open to our amendments. The amendments were tabled by Mr. Serre on Mr. Godin's motion. I wasn't at the meeting, at the last meeting. Now, I heard about what had happened, thanks to Mr. Serre's efforts to explain to us what brought us here today and why a motion was being brought forward when the minister was here. And why, when the minister was here, people were playing politics. Because I think this is an apolitical issue. We know that French is declining. This is an important issue. And I'm proud to see that finally there's going to be an attempt to speak about the funding of minority language post-secondary institutions. So I just wanted to say this officially. It's true that I expressed myself. I was proud. And I just wanted to point out that we don't just have the big guns here today. on our side of the House, on all sides of the House, there are big guns who are defending French in Canada and in Quebec. Thank you very much, Ms. Lalonde. Mr. Godin, you're next on the list. Well, I'd like to thank my colleague. It's always pleasant to see her get so passionate about something. Now, I'm going to speak on behalf, at least, of the Conservatives on this side of the table. We're comfortable with the amendment that was brought forward, and we're comfortable with the motion. So I think that we could now move to a vote. However, I'm not finished. In order to speed this up, I want to vote this because after we voted on the amendment and the motion, I have another motion to bring forward. All right, on the screen, are you all comfortable with that? Is there consent on the Mr. Serre's amendment? Go ahead. No? So we're on the amendment. I believe there's consent around the table. I'm looking at you all. I'm looking all around the table. Is everybody comfortable? And on the screen, is everyone comfortable? Yes? Recorded vote, please. Recorded division. Clerk, go ahead.
Donc, on vote maintenant.
We are voting on Mr. Serre's amendment.
En faveur.
Madame Lalonde.
En faveur.
Madame Fortier.
En faveur.
Monsieur Sanson. En faveur. En faveur. Monsieur Serré.
En faveur.
Monsieur Dalton.
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux.
Pour.
Monsieur Godin.
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux.
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Pour.
Madame Ashton.
Pour.
Pour 11, contre 0. J'ai rendu le résultat, monsieur le Président. Pour 11, contre 0.
Donc,
All right, the motion carries unanimously. That is to say, the amendment is adopted unanimously. We're now on to the main motion. Shall we move to a vote? Any questions? The motion as amended, then. Yes, Ms. Lalonde, go ahead. I don't want to delay anything. However, I know there was some question of the letter. I realize that it's on paper, but perhaps I could read the letter that Mr. Serre was referring to. Well, we voted on the amendment, and the motion was amended, Mr. Godin's motion, and now we have to move to a vote on the motion as amended. Any questions around the table? Everyone understands? Mr. Lehoux, you sort of nodded and shook your head at the same time, but everything is good? I was answering to both your questions at the same time. That's why, Chair. Right. So, Mr. Serre, I just want clarification here. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the intent. There's something related to the urgency of speaking to the minister, but I'm just going to read it. And any other matter related to his duties. I just want to clarify that point. What is the intent on the part of the opposition when they say that the minister should appear? We agree that he appear on the federal funding of minority language post-secondary educational institutions. But what do they mean by any other matter related to his duties? Well, there is a link with the letter. That means that this is in order. Are you going to move another amendment, or we'll move on to a vote if there aren't any other questions or amendments? Mr. Drouin. Normally, when we're talking about votes and estimates, the opposition can ask any question they want to. However, we, in this case, are conducting a study on these post-secondary institutions, so I would expect that those are the questions that should be asked. Perhaps the opposition can tell us what they mean. We just want to make sure that if the minister is being invited on the study of post-secondary institutions, that is the matter that is going to be discussed. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Drouin. Once again, the motion as drafted is in order, considering the last paragraph of the letter. Mr. Gaudin, did you have anything you wanted to say? You're perhaps making the subject matter a little broader through your motion. We are conducting a study on post-secondary institutions, and that's what we had called them to appear on. But do you want to be able to ask broader questions? And if all is well, then we'll move on to a vote. I'm waiting for your comments. This is a debate. Mr. Gaudin, I'm giving you the floor. Well, I just wanted to say, Chair, that the motion relates to the 164 letter, and that's what we are debating right now. So I think it's important. As written, my colleagues saw it, they amended it, but then maybe they realized that they wanted to do something else. So what are they going to do? Go through this sentence by sentence, line by line, word by word? I don't know, Mr. Chair. But I've already spoken to this. Well, that often is the purpose, to go line by line in a motion. Mr. Généreux. A minister, when they come in person, is here to answer questions. Now we've given a timeline up to the end of June. What might happen between now and the end of June? I don't know. Anything might happen. And we might have a question to ask the minister about that, about something else that happened, and it might not be directly related to the study. I think it's a responsibility of the minister to answer any question related to their responsibilities and functions. So I think that part needs to be in there. Thank you, Mr. Généreux. Mr. Beaulieu. Within the study on post-secondary institutions, we invited the Minister Boissonnault, and we want to be able to question him on his way of exercising his responsibilities. And it's understandable that one would want to understand his arguments leading to his defense of Mr. Drouin. And perhaps we also want to ask questions about the Saint-Jean campus in Alberta. I mean, does he have any numbers? Would he want to say, he said that there isn't a problem of anglicizing Quebec because of the universities. Does he have any data to back that up? Mr. Drouin.
If Mr. Beaulieu is interested, then maybe he should invite the leader of his party, who also made some comments about Franco-Albertans. I think that he had to backtrack for a few days. Just a point of order. We're talking about a motion which has been tabled. Mr. Gaudin, you have a beautiful voice. And, you can project it very well. You'd be a wonderful tenor. But you know very well, as I do, that it is that interpreters are injured due to the sounds in the room. So I did see you. I don't want to... the thing is, my mic came on. I don't want to point the finger to the technicians. Here's what I'm trying to say is let's just get back to the topic at hand. I was going to do just that. So the amendment was consented to unanimously. So now we can, if there's no debate, we can move on to the vote. Online, is everybody all right? Perfect. Madam Clerk, we're moving on to the vote.
Donc, on vote sur la motion de M. Gaudin telle qu'amendée.
So we are voting on Mr. Gaudin's amendment. Or rather, Mr. Gaudin's motion as amended.
En faveur.
Monsieur Sanson. En faveur. Monsieur Serré.
En faveur.
Monsieur Dalton.
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux.
Pour.
Monsieur Gaudin.
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux. Ah, c'est Mme Goodridge maintenant. Mme Goodridge.
En faveur.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
En faveur.
Madame Ashton.
En faveur.
Pour 11 contre 0.
Adopté à l'unanimité.
Adopted unanimously. Just a moment.
Parfait. Donc,
Wonderful. So motion is adopted as is. Mr. Godin, and then Mr. Beaulieu. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll get used to it. I do have a second motion in relation to the 1064 to table. 1064 is a letter sent by the Bloc and the Conservatives. Here is the motion, and it has already been sent to the clerk. Given the obscene and offensive comments made by the Liberal MP for Glengarry Prescott Russell to a witness defending the cause of the French language in Quebec, be it resolved that the committee report to the House A. That the Chief Government Whip and member of the Liberal leadership team immediately remove MP Francis Drouin from the Standing Committee on Official Languages, and B. That MP Francis Drouin resign as the chair of the Assemblée parlementaire de la Francophonie. Mr. Chair, I think that this goes beyond the friendship I have with my colleague. An error was committed. It lasted for 4 days, and there was this, long process for redemption. I don't apologize. I sort of apologize, and I apologize by taking advantage of a gap in the procedure and so on. This is not acceptable. The Prime Minister, the Minister of Innovation, the Foreign Affairs Minister, and the Minister of Transport brought up the big guns in order to defend their colleague. We find that unacceptable. I have a lot of respect for this individual, but we are in politics. I don't think that he any longer has the legitimacy to be at this to be a member of this committee, nor to be the chair of the Assemblée parlementaire de la Francophonie. Thank you. I am going to consult with my clerk, and I'll be right back.
OK, je suis prêt à reprendre.
We are ready to continue. There's a lot of procedural techniques to follow here, so please pay closely attention. Mr. Godin, your motion is not receivable for many reasons, not just one. First, we just settled 106.4 with the motion. Well, I'm just telling you that that's what happened. You talked about 106.4. We had a motion. It was adopted, and that is settled. That's adjourned. We are adjourning 106.4. If we go back to the meeting that is still suspended, so meeting 99, everyone is following? If we go back to meeting 99, a motion needs 48 hours of notice before being tabled. That's the first procedural motion. Second, the content being redundant is taking the wording of a motion that we were already debating. Does everybody follow? So 106.4 has been adjourned and is settled. So we are back to meeting 99 without any witnesses. So if there are no other issues, if you have any questions, now is the time. And also, third thing, I had 3 points. First, 106.4 is over. Second, the 48-hour notice of a motion is not respected. And the third one is that you said related to 106.4, if I'm not mistaken. If that's the case, your motion does not conform to 106.4. From the procedural standpoint, you have to revisit the last paragraph of the letter from May 10th that is asking for a 106.4. So that's the paragraph that has more teeth, and it's asking for 106.4, and it is not respected. So those are 3 procedural red flags. So Mr. Godin, the floor is yours. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't agree with your analysis of the procedure. First, when did we actually settle 106.4? Second, where does it say that we can't table more than one motion in a 106.4? For the 48 hours, we know the rules. You are totally correct on that. But the letter from May 10th refers to the Liberal MP's situation, whether or not it's redundant. We can, discuss who is more redundant than the other, but we have such tools as parliamentarians that we can refer to. So if you read the letter correctly, it reflects what was tabled in the second motion. So, first question. 106.4 was settled by you and Mr. Beaulieu. You tabled a motion. You indicated to the committee that it was to respond to the 106.4 and it was amended, and we voted unanimously. So 106.4 is settled. That is my interpretation of the procedure. Is everything all right? Second. So my decision was made. 106.4 is settled. If that had not been the case, and you wanted a second motion on 106.4, it has to reflect the letter. And this is what it says. Pursuant to Standing Order 106.4, and it was signed by you and others, we ask that the committee be convened without delay to invite the Minister of Official Languages to appear before the committee as part of the study on federal funding for minority language post-secondary institutions to respond to the actions of the Member of Parliament for Glengarry Prescott Russell and any other issues related to his duties as Minister of Official Languages. So 106.4 is about the invitation of Mr. Randy Boissonneau, Minister of Official Languages, to this committee. That's 106.4. So say I hypothetically, procedurally, if I said that you could table a second motion and we hadn't settled 106.4, this motion would not be receivable because it has nothing to do with the invitation here and the 48-hour notice. I understand that's the explanation.